Good morning. This is the April 15th, 9 a.m. meeting. It's 9:03 of the Committee of the Whole workshop. Please turn your cell phones to the silence or off setting. Was the meeting properly advertised?
Mr. Chairman, this meeting was advertised in the Pensacola News Journal on April 10th, 2021, in the board's weekly meeting schedule.
Perfect. Commissioner Berry, would you like to lead us in the pledge, please?
Absolutely. Please rise. Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. The first item for this morning is the continued discussion of the increase to the Pensacola Bay Center for fiscal year 2021. And then, Cindy, do we have a presentation? Sorry. Okay.
Commissioners, we felt it was more probably appropriate that instead of a presentation, we sit here, I can give you some highlights. I can run through some highlights that we think are appropriate and then answer any questions that you guys have.
Okay.
So first of all, my name's Tony Sima, Senior Vice President of Operations for the Stadium Arena Theater Division of ASM Global. I'll jump right into things. This started a little over a year ago, March 2020, pandemic starts. Concerts and events are postponed almost immediately. That following week, from the 13th of March, concerts, family shows, entertainment events, sporting events, hockey season ends. It all started on that day. April 2020, ASM and Pensacola Bay Center, we immediately start implementing staffing plans, fixed cost mitigation plans to reduce the expenses. We do not know how long this pandemic is going to last or the situation is going to last, so we immediately start taking steps to ensure the financial stability of the building. June 2020, venue continues to be open even though it's in limited capacities and limited events. Events are continuing to be postponed, rescheduled, and canceled. September 2020, we end the fiscal year end 1920. Over a 6-month period, we've lost 51% of our events. That equals just about $1 million in event revenues. We've reduced our fixed costs by over $900,000, and we only ended up missing budget by $93,000. So we lose half of our events for the season. We only miss budget by $93,000. Pensacola Bay Center, unfortunately, the community of Pensacola is hit by Hurricane Sally. During that time period for 10 days, Pensacola Bay Center is used as emergency shelter. And that basically that's how we ended our fiscal year for 1920. We start the new fiscal year in October 2020, with a county approved budget. Venue continues on a reduced staffing plan, so we have furloughed people to various percentages. We've reduced our staff from a reduction in force. We've cut costs. We continue to cut costs with a new plan moving forward. And we have Hurricane Zeta hit as well. Pensacola Bay Center is again used as an emergency shelter, 1 to 2 days, I believe. December 2020, hockey season starts back up. First Life, we're starting to see. They're able to come in and host events with limited personnel, limited fans. We hold 16 events during that month of December. January 21, venue continues to hold events. We have 11 that month. We're still under reduced staffing levels, but yet we're still hosting events. We're still providing a service to the community, to the event promoters that are coming in. We're still generating revenue, even though it is reduced, and we're still mitigating our costs. February 21, 2 months ago. Again, 7 more events are held in the building. That includes the Toby Mac concert. Early February, early in that month, Cindy notifies the county that per our contract, if there is a budget adjustment, we need to notify the county. We do that, and the following week, we are asked to provide a worst-case scenario budget. At the time that budget comes back, we've estimated it's $877,000. That's at staffing levels continuing where they are at that time. No events for the remainder of the year. So it is truly a worst-case scenario for the building. The last week of February comes around. The county informs the venue there will be no additional funds provided to the building. March starts. We host another 14 events. So we're continuing to operate while all this is going on, hosting events. We have the Sun Belt Conference basketball tournament. We have the professional bull riding event, all nationally publicized events. The Bay Center has asked for another alternatives to the worst case scenario that we provided. We take some time, come back with 2 options. No events, basically closing down the building and cutting staff. That number came out to be around $550,000. Second option was dropping to a skeleton staff. At that time, 493 was our number. Since then, because events have played off and we've done better than expected, that number has dropped to $405,000. The Bay Center is then informed by the county that we need to target $350,000 as the number. And that brings us to today. So where are we today? By the end of this year, we estimate 75% of our budgeted events will have been canceled, rescheduled, or postponed for this fiscal year. That's approximately $1.58 million in event revenue that we will have lost. We'll have reduced our budget costs by $1.2 million, 37% reduction overall. We'll have reduced our staffing levels by 54% across the entire fiscal year. And just in the time period between April and September, that staffing level will have dropped to 76% reduced if we drop to this $350,000 number. So some things to consider. If the venue gets closed, it's a lose-lose-lose situation. And the reason I say that, we lose 32 confirmed events that we already have on our books scheduled. That's a little over $400,000 in event revenue that we're estimating at this time. We lose additional events that are in discussion. Cindy's in discussion with promoters that are out there now. We lose jobs. 15 jobs will be cut from our force. So the future, the biggest thing is it will take 4 to 6 months off of our event schedule because nobody will be at the building to be taking calls for future events. So that $1.58 million in event revenue that we're estimating we lose this year, it's probably going to be another $1 million that we'll expect to lose because there's nobody in the office anymore. And that's where we are right now. So, be happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah, if it pleases the board, I'm actually going to have a few comments first. I'm pulling it up here in a second, but I think for me, one, I support the Bay Center. I think it.
Thank you.
I think it
Appreciate
adds. I think it adds to the community. The events that are held there, of course, having it as an emergency shelter, going to events with my family. I mean, we were all there for a meeting yesterday. But I think also for us, though, is that, and I'll say this, it's a lot easier to look back at in the last year and try to rewrite history and try to say things that we could have done better. I think for me, part of the issue is profitability of it over the long term. So I guess my question is, how many venues does ASM operate?
Globally, it's over 300. Within the U.S., 150,
Okay.
around 150 some.
How many operate at a loss? Of the
I'd say
100?
probably
150.
75%.
Okay. How about at a loss over $1 million?
I don't know that answer,
Okay.
Commissioner.
But you can see where I'm going.
I do.
In years past, we have supported it through the TDT, our tourist development tax. I think for part of this is asking was enough done. So I guess for me, what type of information did you all as a corporate entity put out to the managers of these venues as to what to do? I mean, you threw out some dates of, March 2020 when things shut down, April 2020, June 2020. And I know that they took some measures. Having someone and knowing people that work in the hotel industry, I know Hilton and Marriott corporate, I mean, they either dismissed the employee or salaries were cut by 60-70%. So I guess for me is how many events did we have between March and June?
March and June of.
To March of June of 2020. And think about the whole.
March
state
and
was-
June, I'm not sure of the March and June number. I actually have it somewhere, but I do know that we had 93 events last fiscal year, which was 25% of the 406 that we had
Right.
estimated.
And we also had 5 months of fiscal year 20 before it shut down.
That's correct.
So a number of those were hockey games and meetings and things like that.
And concerts.
Right. And so I think, again, looking back, it's a lot easier to say, could this have been managed a little bit better? And I think that's probably, at least for me, where this discussion is going is that, we do pay a management fee. And we hope that it would be managed as if it was ASM's money and not just the county's money that's going to bail them out. Again, with some people in the industry, I liken it to a hotel operator who hires somebody to manage their. I understand it's going to ultimately be our responsibility. If a hotel operator hires somebody to manage the hotel, you still need that front desk person to check people in, even though you're only selling 10 rooms instead of 100 rooms. You still needed that housekeeper to do it. But we hope that, again, in the times that we were having, that people can do other jobs than just what their title says. And knowing that it's the best for the bottom line. I would say that we were fortunate at the county, we didn't shut down. We continue to provide services for our citizens. In fact, I think we did shut down ECAP for a little bit, but we use those employees elsewhere. And so I think that's, at least for me, where some of this issue comes in. And so I think we want to make sure that, as we do every day, make sure that we're being very wise with the public dollar. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board for their discussions. Commissioner Underhill?
Thank you very much. Madam Administrator, when I was asking you about this in preparation for this meeting, a slide that was very important to me was the furlough plan that was included in our discussion. That is not in the backup that I can see, so if you could please get that on the screen, because it's going to be pertinent to some of the questions that I have for this speaker. So, Mr. Sema, thank you very much for coming down and talking with us about this. Obviously, we're in a tight spot, and a tight spot requires people of good faith to sit and talk with one another.
Yes, sir.
Is that what you're looking for?
No, the furlough plan that shows who got furloughed and who didn't.
That's it. That's it. Oh.
Oh, is it?
It's not on those.
Is it something we can get up on the screen?
If they're going to put it up on the screen.
You said it's on page 6? I'm sorry, I left my glasses at home.
Page 6 of 68.
Ah, there we go. Thank you very much. Yeah, if we can get that up on the screen. So going back to 2020, while they're pulling that up, Mr. Sema, you've cut your fixed cost by $900K. You only missed your budget by $93K. And you did that to a great extent with furloughs and reduction in force. Is that correct from what you?
Fixed cost mitigation plan.
Fixed cost
Correct.
mitigation and furloughs and reduction in force was a big part of that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when I look at the sheet, and can we get it up on the screen so everybody else can see?
Take about 5 minutes. They're pulling down what they have, putting it up again to review.
Okay. So we'll get back to that once it's up on the screen, because I think it's a very important part of this conversation. But then when you were asked so let's kind of put that away for a minute. We'll get back to it. When you were asked about your worst case scenario,
Just look different.
you responded with the $850K price tag was your response to.
877, yes, sir.
Okay, so 877 was your response to your worst case scenario. And that also included no events for the rest of the year, correct?
That's correct.
But it also included maintaining your current staffing.
It did.
So why would you maintain your current staffing for the rest of the year if you're not going to have any events for the rest of the year? Why would that be a worst case scenario?
I believe that was the direction that we were provided, but Cindy was the one that had the discussion with the county, so I would leave it to her.
Yeah, we did keep our full staff in light of putting the budget together and not knowing what was going to happen at that point. And even at that point, there were some people that had already been laid off and furloughed. But with the presumption that we would continue to book and potentially be able to reduce that overall number, even though we were asked to prepare the worst-case scenario. I don't know if that
Okay.
answers
Well,
your...
not really, but okay. The worst case scenario would include certainly not having any more events for the rest of the year. But it would also include going ahead and furloughing the remainder of the staff. There would be no sense in keeping the staff on board other than maybe somebody to answer the phones and some maintenance folks to if you weren't going to have any events for the rest of the year. That would have been an appropriate response for a worst case scenario. Now let's look at what's up on the screen. This is the actual.
Commissioner, that was provided at a later date with the reduced staff that you're talking about that came out to that $540,000 option number.
Okay. All right. So I want to go back then. I mean, at a later date. Again, shouldn't really have to be fishing through that if we're really communicating with one another about what really needs to happen or should have happened. So now, as I'm looking at this sheet that's in front of us now, this actually shows what who lost how much.
Yes.
Right. And it does not take a whole lot to recognize that your highest paid employees barely took a haircut at all, where the blue collar workers took it in the shorts. And it's really unfortunate to see that because, a 48% reduction of payroll for a lower income employee hurts him a lot more, but saves us a lot less than even a 25% increase or decrease in pay for your senior executives that get paid a lot more. So I think that I have to agree with the chairman in that we are where we are in, certainly initially because of this crisis. But the problem isn't the crisis. The problem is, to a great extent, how we handled the crisis. And quite frankly, the furloughing should have, in my opinion, focused on savings and on what a proper operational plan should have been during this time. At a time when we were literally telling everybody to stay at home, and we even shut down our beaches for a couple of weeks, an outside venue. We did not make the hard decisions that would have cost the decision makers personally. Now, I will tell you that just about every business owner in my district made the hard decisions that cost them and their families personally in order to keep the payroll rolling for the hardest hit blue-collar workers of the county. That's what I think would have put us in a much better position for me to be having a conversation about additional funding. Because that wasn't done, I won't be able to support any additional funding when you consider that I don't see a haircut here on the part of the senior executives here, much less the senior executives at ASM Global. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, sir, thank you for being here. Cindy, Michael.
Thank you for having us, Commissioner.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate the presentation. And, I can share some agreement with what both my counterparts have said, but I just want to start by saying to you that I believe the Bay Center is an important asset in the community. The second year it was open, I actually graduated from Pensacola High School. The first year it was open, I went to my brother's graduation there. When I was on the school board for 10 years, I went to more than 70 graduations in the Civic Center. So believe me, before that happened and the graduations were held out in football stadiums and the mosquitoes and the humidity and the rainstorms, it's just an asset that brings great things to our community. So would we, in a perfect world, always like it to be a profitable thing? I think your comment earlier that you said 75% of these sorts of venues, they break even or lose money. And that's just the nature of the beast. These gigantic convention centers and things like that, they don't generate money, they don't make money. It's just too big of a space, and unless you fill it 24/7, 365, So the decision for us, knowing that there was a pandemic, we can't ignore that. I mean, obviously there were some struggles before the pandemic. Let's just be very realistic and honest about that. And because of that, I've been on this board I'm in my 5th year, twice, actually 3 times, I've brought plans to modernize that facility. I do believe we have to fish or cut bait. I don't believe it needs to be demoed and rebuilt, although there were some plans percolating that had some potential funding sources to do that, and I'm fine with that. I was always concerned about the reduction in the capacity. So where we are now, I see the reductions. When you drop $900,000 in fixed costs and salaries, you got to make decisions about who you keep. I'm not going to necessarily look behind that, but I will say this. I'm not interested necessarily in using TDT money to keep you afloat. So I will support enough to keep you through the fiscal year if it comes from the rescue plan money. If it's fronted from TDT but returned after the minute we get our rescue plan money. Because again, I get back to the first point that I made. We're all living through a pandemic. Some industries have done exceptionally well. Some industries have been hit. Some big multinational gigantic corporations have been bailed out. Delta Airlines, the airlines, how come they get a bailout? ASM's a global company. Apparently you didn't. Maybe their lobbyists are better. I don't know. But here's the other thing I'm going to say. Any tax dollars that I vote to expend, I want a clawback provision. If you get money from us and then you turn around and get your lobbyist is successful and you get some piece of this $2 trillion or the next $3 trillion they're going to print money for, if you get some of that, I want our money back. And I agree with Commissioner Bender. We do need a plan going forward. Again, we do pay you a management fee. We expect you to do what we need you to do and make this thing as efficient as possible. But again, I get back to our parks don't make money. The post office loses money. The Marine Corps, some government functions you pay for and you don't make money from them, right? That's what people have to understand. And to play Monday morning quarterback, and bring you in here and rake you over the coals, I'm not interested in doing it. Not when I've seen businesses go under. I've seen other businesses get bailed out. I've seen multi-million-dollar corporations get $3, $4, $5 million in paycheck protection money, even though they're having a record year locally. So we need to get off the high horse on some of this. Let's keep the Bay Center going. It's an important community asset. We've got graduations coming up. I want to muddle through this pandemic. We're on the far end of it. We're on the edge of it. We're going to beat it, no matter what the media says. They want to keep it going forever. I don't know why, but we're going to beat it. And when we do, I'd like the Bay Center to be here for the citizens that I represent. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you,
Jeff.
Commissioner.
And I think to expand those comments is that I think we have turned a corner, hopefully. I mean, we see that the number of those getting vaccinated have gone up. We're starting to host more events. I attended 2 of the basketball games. I think the Sun Belt Conference would say that they enjoyed the facility. They enjoyed working with the staff. I mean, it looked like first class. I know, Commissioner, you got a couple of them in. And so, part of this loss was to ramp up for that, to ramp up for hockey games. I said it last time, that the cost to operate a hockey game is still about the same. Maybe you get to usher here or there, or one fewer ticket taker, but if you've cut your income in half in terms of ticket sales, then that also impacts your food and beverage. And so you're not going to make as much money, but your cost is still going to be there. And so I think, I do support, just as the Commissioner said, of allowing the TDT to front the money until the American Recovery Act money comes in, to allow the Bay Center to continue to operate. I think the other thing I heard, though, is that this 350 is based off of maybe not worst case scenario, but I think if things, let's keep an open communication, and if things go better and you can return some of that would be great.
Yes.
If it doesn't turn out to be as bad as it is, hopefully people are ready to travel. They want to come down to Pensacon. And that's a great event. We appreciate them continuing to have that here. I know the graduations, although important to the community, though that's not a moneymaker. But it's, again, I think it's important to have that. And this is an asset for the community. And we just need to know where we are on it. Sure, Commissioner May.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your travels and coming down. We do appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And I will say, Cindy, for me, you do a great job over at the Bay Center. It's very unfortunate that we've had to endure a pandemic as well as a disaster in these last few months. And I'm very concerned as it relates to furloughing employees, Cindy. I mean, those employees that are on the catering staff, those people who have to catch the bus to work and ride to work, that's of concern to me, and that's why we've gotten payroll protection money. That's why you got COVID money. I mean, because there is a multiplier effect when you begin to furlough and lay people off without money. I mean, at the end of the day, taxpayers pay it anyway because it becomes unemployment and those type of things. And when people become homeless or they become unhealthy due to lack of resources, that's something that we as a community continue to pay for. So I'm supportive of any creative way in which we could, keep people working. I mean, we need to keep people working in our community. I did have 1 or 2 questions. Did your national office get any payroll protection money or any?
No, sir.
And why didn't they apply? Were they not
We
eligible for the
did not-
payroll protection?
We were not eligible.
Why weren't they eligible?
Due to the ownership type and the size of the company and who our clients are, the company itself, the corporate company, did not qualify.
Okay. So throughout your entire corporate, y'all received no stimulus money, no payroll money?
Not from a corporate perspective. We did have buildings themselves, the individual venues, that did receive some. From all our buildings in our division, we applied for $67 million in the CARES Act funds. We received $17 million. And that was throughout all 155
And we
buildings.
did apply from this building, Cindy, we just didn't get it, correct? Oh, we didn't apply. Oh, if we didn't, that's fine. I would wonder why we didn't, if other venues did.
We had a discussion with county personnel and to begin talking about it. We were told not to because the funds were already going in other directions. So we kind of backed off a little bit, and then I said, well, let's try and see again. So we had a discussion, and apparently, again, it was already too late. The funds had already been promised to different areas.
So those would be the CARES dollars that the county received?
Correct, that's
Okay.
correct, that's correct.
Not the federal, but the CARES, the
That's correct.
67 that we have, that
that's
we still have.
correct.
some of.
But I don't see how someone could have prohibited them from a corporation from applying for CARES funding. I mean, would that have been a violation because we applied, they not been eligible to apply?
I mean, I believe the gentleman said, and just doing some cursory views, I mean, I see a number of, in 15 minutes, just on my phone, I'm able to see so-and-so facility got $2 million from federal government, so-and-so facility got another $2 million, another facility got $1.5 million from federal funds, which I presume are part of the composite $17 million.
Yes, sir.
So Cindy, I believe and don't want to speak for my colleague, but I believe Commissioner Mahay was asking about, did you apply for CARES money? Did you include our facility in your ask that resulted in the $17 million that you did get?
So all the requests were done individually by each venue.
So this venue did not specifically apply
That's
by
correct.
itself? What would that reason have been? What would that rationale have been? And I apologize, Lemon, you've got the floor.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Cindy.
I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer. I mean, we spoke with the county, because we were starting to put together, because.
Candidly, Cindy, these conversations wouldn't have been with the county. This would have been with your corporate office. These asks that were granted through the federal government, I presume, were directly done with your corporate office, not with the.
No, sir.
Okay, so when it says Pinnacle Bank Arena got $2 million federal funds, Van Andel Arena got $2 million federal funds, what federal funds are you talking about then?
Those individual venues applied with their client, which was the city of Lincoln for Pinnacle Bank.
Okay.
And they received it from the state. It wasn't through corporate office. Each individual venue did the application. And during those times, for every program that became available, our corporate offices, we had regional calls with each one of the buildings. We went and we discussed each of the application processes, and then the venues then went and met with the clients, the county in this particular case, and that application was then put forth.
So you're saying, so Lincoln were Pinnacle, I guess,
Pinnacle
Lincoln,
Bank,
Nebraska?
yeah,
Okay.
Lincoln, Nebraska, yes, sir.
So the federal funds that are referred to in the Lincoln, in Pinnacle Bank documents didn't come directly from the federal government. Those were granted through the local municipality,
That's correct. That came through the state,
through the state.
yes.
Is the state the partner in that facility?
No, the city of Lincoln is our client there.
Okay, well, I don't understand then how they got funds directly from the state if you're saying they went through the managing partner.
We went through our client to apply for those funds.
Okay.
Just like the city of Oklahoma City, Chesapeake Bay Arena was another one. I believe they received 1.7 million. They went through the city. They received their funds from the city allocation of the federal funds that were distributed.
May I ask sorry, real quick, how many in the state of Florida received it? Because I don't know exactly how, maybe different states had different procedures than the state of Florida. And I mean, so,
We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 buildings in the state of Florida in our division.
okay,
Kissimmee, Florida over by Orlando, Punta Gorda, and then the 2 venues here in Pensacola.
so did any of those receive CARES funding?
Kissimmee did receive some, and the total amount,
That's
I
fine.
don't know off the top of my head.
So, I'd be more interested to know if the city of Kissimmee or the county there.
It went through the county.
It went through the county.
Yes, sir.
Was it part of the county's allocation?
Yes, sir.
So it would have, so if my understanding, yeah, is that it would have been out of the 67 million that we received.
Well, I think they could have went directly to the feds. I don't know, Robert. I mean, I would assume.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm, it's fine. It was just a question for me, Mr. Chairman. I mean, it's
No,
fine.
it's-
I'm going to be supportive of where Commissioner Bagash was in trying to help it out. I mean, I agree that, you know, it's a public park and they're probably never going to pay for themselves, but if there's an opportunity to get money, I think we should get it. And I guess just my question was, Cindy said she would have applied, but she was instructed or to not apply. And if it was because we were applying and getting it, then absolutely, that's correct. But if there was another pot,
And
I
that's,
wouldn't understand why she would be recommended to not apply. And that's what I was trying to dig down.
and that's what I'm trying to clarify is that she was told not to apply for the 67 million that the county already had received or was going to receive.
Well, she couldn't have gotten that
Is that
anyway.
right? Is it? I mean, I'm
I
not
don't know
aware that
what
this conversation
conversation
happened,
she's
but,
talking about.
but you're saying the
So-
67 million that,
Because the city did provide some funding, I think 35,000 or some
the
number,
Sanger,
to
yes.
the Sanger.
Okay.
And I found that out recently, and it was, the city gave it as part of their portion of the CARES that we provided then. So I'm not aware that they've been told they couldn't apply to us for a portion of the 60.
or that there was a separate pot of money that they could have applied for.
Yeah, there's not that.
And I do think that, as our last discussion, we did ask them to look into applying for the shuttered venues. And I think are we still having discussions on, on where we are on that?
Yes, sir. So we have an expert in New Orleans at the Superdome that stays on top, stays on top of the programs, the federal programs that come out. His name is Grant Hall. He has been on a weekly basis. He provides updates to the venues on the application process. When the portal opens, it's supposed to open the 8th, shut down the very next day or that night for different reasons. All of the frequently asked questions that come out, and he provides that. Now, for the Shuttered Venues program, it does need to go through the client, the owner of the venue, to apply for those funds. So I believe there has been communication with the county personnel to provide all that information and what we can provide to you to help for that. We have the questionnaire. There's 63 questions in that questionnaire of the application, and we have all that information, and we're prepared to help out any way that we can to get those additional funds.
And Mr.
Commissioner
Chairman,
McNeil.
with all due respect, sir, we have 1,500 employees, and when we start making references to county employees, it doesn't offer me an opportunity to rebuttal, to ask a direct question of what exactly was said. And so, for me, I kind of operate in the atmosphere of who said it, you know, who shot John, nobody knows, but he's still dead. And so that's kind of always where I come. So, you know, when we say, you know, there is a point person, there is someone that's identified to negotiate. The entire county is not negotiating with the Bay Center. There is a person. And if there was a person on staff that misled and said, don't apply when you had the opportunity, then that person for me would be held accountable. But I can't even have a discussion with that person if I don't know that. And we don't necessarily have to have it here in the public, Cindy, but we are trying to resolve it in the public. So I would love to assist and make sure that we do explore. I'm going to be supportive. I mean, you know how I feel about the Bay Center, Cindy. I'm going to be supportive of getting you on. But, I mean, if there is still an opportunity to apply, let's apply. I mean, you know, and
Yes, sir.
let's get them. I mean, we want to, it's a stimulus. I mean, I don't think that it's unfair to say that someone needs a little supplemental help. We've given out millions of dollars to small businesses to keep them afloat through our COVID grant. We've had to subsidize, you know, transportation and other services that we provided. I mean, obviously, there has been an increase in what services do. So, I mean, it's not odd or strange to me that you would have to come before us today to ask for money. But being stewards of these dollars, we have to assure ourselves and the citizens that we've explored every opportunity for other sources of revenue to make you whole. But I will be
Yeah.
supportive of Commissioner Bagash, but I certainly would want to make sure that we have explored every opportunity. I mean, and, you know, not just the rescue plan, I mean, that's coming, but, you know, any other opportunities that we could have gotten, maybe federally, that our local county didn't get from the state.
And Commissioner May,
Yes, sir.
I called Kelly Massey at SBDC because he is the one that helps with the shuttered venue applications, and I did make sure that they were in contact with him as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Commissioner May's comments with regard to the use of the passive voice. The passive voice always leads to miscommunication, and active voice allows for clarity. So could you please restate, Ms. Pennington, you said in the passive voice that you were told not to. When were you told not to apply? By whom?
It was a department director that we were having a meeting about other things, and we brought up the CARES Act and applying for it, and we were told that, admittedly, my mistake for not then picking up the phone and calling. I trusted this person, so again, my error, my mistake.
Cindy, we operate in the sunshine for the purpose of telling the truth and the whole truth. I mean, you say a department head, a person. I don't have anything there that I can work from. We need to have an understanding of what was missed so that we can then have a starting point for what to do next.
So you want me to tell you who that person?
Yes, please.
It was Cassie Boatwright.
Okay, so Cassie Boatwright told you not to apply for any CARES Act money, or did
Yes.
she tell you to apply for?
She told us not to bother, that she was not getting hardly anything. She was only getting a couple of things, for us not to bother because the funds were already promised to other areas.
Not to bother applying for the $67 million that was coming to the county?
No,
for-
not to apply for any funds for the Bay Center specifically.
The $67 million that came to the county.
Out of the county funds.
No,
Oh,
but
out-
I'm just.
That's not what she's
Yeah.
saying. She's not saying, she said she was told not to apply for any fund. That's what she said.
So you were told not to apply for any type of relief
correct.
of any kind?
That's correct.
Okay, and when was that you were told that?
I'd have to go back and look, sir, on my calendar. I
Okay, if
don't
you
have
would
that-
please
I
look.
don't have that date. Yes, I will.
If you could please look and find that out, send that to me, and if the other commissioners care, if that's important to their
Well, and I-
decision-making as well, please. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just ask, I mean, did you ever mention that to our budget staff or Mr. Hall that met with you frequently?
We did have a conversation, I think it was the day before, with Chips and Mr. Hall, because we went ahead and started putting more things together. And we were told at that point that it was too late, that it was going to the board, and the funds had already been decided upon. Is that not?
So just for the record, I think for me, there's a difference in applying to the county's 67 million if we had other needs that weren't being met versus applying for a separate pot. Because I think, I mean, I don't even know, I'd have to go back and look at the rules of even if it was, because there was, I think it was something like you could make up lost revenue and things like that. And so I would want to look at that, but
Well, Mr. Chairman, I absolutely agree with you, and I
Right.
think that's one of the things that we're really trying to get down to in terms of, that better management could have made for a much better situation, in that if a small business came and applied, and I know I keep using the small business reference because, it's, if a small business person doesn't make $1, it's their dollar they don't make. And I believe that the small business is, in fact, the most pure form of our American capitalism. So that's the model that we should all be living by. And up here on the board, I know that we really treat these dollars as if they were coming out of our own pockets. It's a moral obligation of this job. So let's use that parallel. If I was to tell a small business came and applied for money from the Escambia County to help them through COVID, and Escambia County said, no, sorry, we don't have anything, or don't bother, it's already gone. That small business then goes everywhere else that they can. They would apply at the state level, they'd apply at the federal level, they talk to Warrington Emergency Aid, any other source of income that they would have, not just simply throw up their hands and say, I was told not to. And that's where we're at right now. I mean, everybody has had to work so hard to keep their heads above water throughout this entire COVID business. with the understanding that if they didn't keep their heads above water, they were going to drown. I feel like now, here we are, talking about additional money, and I think that to a great extent, when taxpayer dollars are involved, sometimes people think, well, I don't have to work all that hard for it, because at the end of the day, there'll be a bailout. The bailout mentality is creating inflation in this country. And so that's and that's really the concern that I have, and I'm looking forward to getting down to what did you do in response to being told don't bother, and in fact, is that the whole nature of that conversation that took place? So I look forward to getting to the bottom of that. Thank you.
Commissioner May?
Yeah, I don't know if we get to the bottom, but there's not one business in America, small corporate, that has not received some type of assistance. And so I don't think that this is, ASM is any different. I mean, it's, if they didn't have a shortfall, I'd be concerned. Knowing that other companies did, I mean, but it does bother me, if a person came and applied for a CARES Act grant, we can't tell them to just apply for a CARES Act and you're only eligible. They can apply for Payroll Protection CARES Act, or the Studer grant. I mean, they have the ability to apply for as many grants as they like. So unless there's some clause, Allison, in which, because we do own the base center and operations, that they would have to get our permission to apply. I mean, I don't know if you would tell me that or not, but I can conceivably see where you would be, Cindy, if someone in a position of leadership told you not to apply. And for me as well, that would be extremely disappointing to ever tell someone to not to apply for any funds. But with that being said, Jeff, I'm supportive of what you said, and I think that's reasonable.
So-
and hopefully we can, Cindy, get up and running, and we can get things turned around. And not, a lot of people get caught up on administration, but my bottom line are the people that are serving the hot dogs, the hamburgers, and they're the bedrock of America. And whatever we can do to at least keep people employed, I want to be supportive of that.
So do you want to go ahead and take a vote now, and we'll ratify it next week? And of course, for me, including all the
Do we need to take a vote
callbacks.
today?
Yeah, or can
we
we just
just-
give direction to
Yeah, I think,
Janice
to me, just give direction and we can.
for the 250? Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing, Lumen and Robert, is 250 fronted from TDT, but with the instruction that it be replenished from our American Rescue Plan money the minute we get it. And also, furthermore, that if you independently go out and get money, to help you stay afloat, then we will recoup that money back.
And Jeff,
That's reasonable.
And that's reasonable, and I think some direction, and I'll turn it over to my colleague to the right, because he's waited patiently, and I know he was talking, and we cut him off. I'd like to, I see us as partners in that base center. I don't see it as an island. Not just waiting on the American Rescue funds that we would get, but we should be collaboratively working, telling ASM, let's apply for everything we can. If there's a second round
Absolutely.
of payroll money, everything, we have a staff, that's what they do. And why don't we work together and say, let's apply for everything we can apply for?
Absolutely.
And if we don't get anything, doesn't matter, but at least we tried.
Well, and I want to point out, and I agree with everything that you said, Lumen, but my understanding, and we're talking about venues that got money, I bet if you peel the onion and research them, I was told that ASM, because of their size, the number of employees, the fact that they're multinational, did not qualify. So when I'm hearing about some of their venues that got it, I guarantee you it was probably, if you peel back the onion, it was the city of Omaha or the city of Kissimmee, through their allotment, proactively gave it, and then it was allowable under the law. And I'm just going to assume that. I have to assume that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't disagree with you, Lumen. They are partners in our community, and again, to beat people up, everyone's doing the best they can, right? We're all doing the best we can. I am disappointed to hear that a staff member told you not to apply, though. That bothers me, and I don't think that person had that authority, frankly, if I'm being very, very honest. And I'm certain there will be some conversations about that, because you've got to be, when you're drowning, you're going to reach for everything you can get to stay afloat. But look, I'm not here to beat you up. You have a very tough business that you're in, and even in the best of years, you might break even, you might lose a little, but through it all, you provide a service to this community. So I want to see it going. Sure. And we're about to segue into a different topic. So when I think that's a reasonable thing. I think Robert supports Lumen gentlemen, and obviously I want to hear from my counterpart on the end of the
Yep.
dais.
Commissioner Berry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can live with it. I mean, it's not ideal, of course, but, I agree with, Commissioner Bergosh and my colleague, my closest colleague to my left. It is a partnership. It's certainly a private entity, but when you're funded largely, substantially by public dollars, that changes I think that changes the way that the operations have to be assessed to a degree. And when you see, when I see the amount of pay that stayed in place for positions that, and I'm not going to pick any one line item to ask you what this person did on a day-to-day basis, but I have concerns as to what, with very, very, very little going on at the facility. I have concerns, like I would have concerns if, and I do have concerns about, I think they're regularly expressed from this dais about, about county employees and so what exactly does John Doe do, I have to, wonder what some of those line items on the spreadsheet there that continued to make 100% of their salary, just literally, well, what did John Doe do during the week? Well, what did they do on Tuesday at 2 o'clock? That, I think those are real questions. But nonetheless, that's, somewhat looking at what's in the past, and I can live with what my colleagues have, have kind of expressed some support for. But I also reiterate the tone about being aggressive about this the current round of funding. There do seem to, candidly, so, all right, there's really only 2 of y'all left, and I guess this is for the gentleman. You and Live Nation, right, globally doing these types of things? Is it primarily the 2 of y'all?
For venue management?
Yes.
There's probably about 3 or 4 of us that are right in that.
Comparable size?
Yeah, well, no, we're, the 3 below us, if you add them all together, they equal ASM size.
I would be very concerned about, I would presume that a company that size then has some lobbying efforts. I would be concerned about multiple stimulus bills and multiple stimulus packages that specifically excluded you. That's, I would be very disappointed in whoever I'm paying to advocate on my behalf, candidly. They can't, language was written into, apparently, the first 4 stimulus bills that specifically excluded, well, the first 2 excluded the industry, the second 2 excluded you and a couple others. That's surprising, and if I was in leadership, I would be very concerned about that. One of the questions and one of the concerns I had a few months back, a lot of companies of your size, they operate with dozens of subsidiaries. They would have Pensacola Bay LLC, a division of ASM Global. If that's how you operated, they would be eligible. They would have been eligible in the first. They would have been eligible for PPP. That subsidiary would have. I'm sure you're intimately aware of that, but it's just surprising that throughout 12 months of legislation, you haven't been able to successfully navigate the portals to get any direct funding. As with that size, that's shocking. It's why one of the biggest questions I had a couple months ago when the issue came up is, I asked our attorney to get something in writing from ASM Global's general counsel that says they've really received no funding, because that's just shocking. It appears to be true, but still, it's shocking. To then be depending on your agency partners in every location that you do business, doesn't seem to be a great. It doesn't seem to be a great model, but. Like I said, I'm going to be supportive of it, and I hope that we can do better going forward.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Cindy, and what does the 250 buy? Excuse me?
It would be added to the one that you did at the last meeting, so it would be the 350.
Oh, so it's 350. Okay, so what does 350 buy us?
What does the 350 get us?
I mean, I mean, are we going to still furlough, or we're still reducing operations? I mean,
Significant furloughs,
because I'm just trying to see, did you need 355, 360,000, or did you need 280,000? I'm just trying to form it in my mind. Is that what it is?
That's the 350 plan, the furloughs.
I apologize. Oh, I have that, and I apologize. Cindy, I apologize.
the number that we've come up with is 405, but that still includes significant furloughs and still managing events that we have on the calendar and still working towards getting more events for the fall and into 2022 and beyond. It's paying
actually,
our operating expenses, keeping things to
So I think,
minimum or not, I mean, or we do without.
so I think part of this that I've also been asked to ask the board is what capacity do we
Yes,
want
I was just gonna say.
to operate at? You know, we feel, or I say, you know, we discussed at the TDC the other day that we think maybe in October we can go to 75%.
I want to go to 75% now. Why would we wait? I mean, you know, there are other venues in Florida right now at 100%. We're self-limiting at 50%. We had that discussion. The minute someone else went to 100, I don't want to be third, right? I mean,
But that's why I was asking Commissioner, Bogart, what does this 350 get? Does it get us at 50%, 75, 100?
well,
What does
that was part of what we have to bring from this discussion. They're holding at 50% based on us. So we need to give them, I think 75% now.
So
June
we don't give
1st.
them another dime, they can go to 100% is what you're saying. They're holding
Well-
back, I mean, that,
Well,
it got to
for
be
instance-
based on,
What my discussion with them, guys, my discussion with them was, and I'm not going to name the artist, but there's a well-known act that wanted to come, but at 50%, the money doesn't work. At 75%, they might be able to break even. But again, you know, why would we self-limit ourselves when other venues are at 100%? I mean, if there's a way to do it, I mean, I think we ought to approve them, let them run their business. I mean,
Well, yeah,
because
I'm
it's hard to
trying to see what
chastise them. Look, it's hard to chastise them in one hand, while we're telling them, but keep it at 50%, while their peers around the southeast are at 75 or 100%. So it's kind of hypocritical. I think we give them 75% right now.
and Commissioner Bogart, you know, absolutely, I support you in moving back, but I would hope that it would be phased in and not, just dropping. I mean, rather, we are phasing out of this, but there's still hospitalizations, there's still death. I mean, there's still unknowns as it relates to this COVID, and I mean, across the country, we're having what they call relapses, and so we should be strategic and very diligent in how we implement. And so, I mean, I can be supportive of getting to 100%, Jeff.
Well, what
but
about
just keep that
70,
in-
what about
just
we
keep
leave
that
this
in
meeting
mind.
today and let them know they can do 75%? That's below what some other venues in Florida are doing right now. That gives them the ability to book some acts that they don't have at 50%. Am I right? Yes. See, I want to work with them, but I also want to give them the tools. It's hard to spank them and say, we won't give you any money, but also keep your artificially, deflated attendance at 50%. It's just not fair. It's not fair to them.
But, and Cindy, let me ask this question, and I'm trying to get to where you are, Commissioner Bogart, and you know my position on COVID and social distancing and protocols. I've been pretty consistent on that, even when no one else really was. Cindy, if you went to 75%, I mean, would the 350 still work? I mean, how does that work? I mean, so we're giving you 350 and you're operating at 50%. Are you going to need more money to operate at 75%?
It gives us more seats, which also helps us with additional revenue, parking, concessions, merchandise. That's all.
So 75%, you may need less money.
No, 75%, we would get more
No,
money.
I'm saying you may need less money from us if you could go to 75% because your revenue income is going to increase, so your subsidy may be able to decrease. Right? I mean, yeah,
Commissioner, we would love for it to play out that way. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the intention. That is the intention, right?
No, yeah, I mean, I'm
So
not
the
an
more
accountant.
people we can get in, the more money we can make, the less money we need from you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So
That's just common sense from a
just like
construction worker.
Commissioner Burgess said, the better the capacity we have, and we're happy to look at that on a monthly basis. Anything that we can get from you guys that loosens that to allow us to have more events. Because right now.
We're going to get that today. We're getting that today. And in fact, if we need a straw vote on that, you guys should be at 75% today.
'Cause
If your
right
peers are
now-
at 100% and we're keeping you at 50%, we're not helping the situation. So I want to get, that's something I want
And
to.
Jeff, I'm good. I mean, well, as we look at COVID, I mean, you know, it's very touchy to my heart, but I'm there. And I simply was just asking the question, if we could increase revenue, would it reduce subsidy? You know, and I would think that, you know, that seems to be, I mean, Commissioner Berry is the finance man, and you and Robert are taking this, but it seems to me that that's a logical result of if I bring more dollars in, there's less dollars that I would have to subsidize with.
Yes.
And so I'm very supportive of that, Jeff.
Hey, Cindy, you and I had a discussion, and you said Jacksonville was at 100%, one of their arenas, but you also mentioned to me, we had a very intriguing conversation. You said Tallahassee, and I've researched that, and that's not
Yeah,
true.
Tallahassee is not at.
But you told me that it was.
We may have misunderstood. They're only at 25 to 30% because of the university is concerned about the overall
Okay.
perception currently.
But Jacksonville is 100%.
Correct. Biloxi, Mississippi is not one of our venues, but I know that building manager, and I've had conversations with him earlier this week to find out. They are at 75%.
Right now?
Correct.
Okay.
And come June 15th, everything he books and all will be at 100%.
So Lumen, what about, I know there's a big show at the end of this month, and we're operating a second show now and at 50%.
Correct.
So how about, and when is that show? April?
It's Mike Epps, it's a comedy show.
Okay, but it's April
30th.
30th.
So how about, we're not going to be able to do anything to help that one. But if we said May 1st, 75%, would that help you?
Well, yes, yes, to answer your question, it'd help. I have another show, it's a children's show for June, that wants to go on sale next week, and he's been holding off because he's been hoping that we could get above the 50%. He wants to be at least 75% to be able to sell more seats.
I just
And
don't see why we're not. And you can do that safely? Can you do that safely with masks
Absolutely.
and the whole thing, the
All of our venue
sanitizers?
shield protocols will stay in place. The hand sanitizing, the cleaning.
Jeff, I could go with May 1st.
All of that stays in
I don't even
place.
think that we ever limited them to 50%. Who
No, they would not go until we gave them the authority. That's what
Well,
I
who-
said.
who
I asked
said
the
the
same question. I
50%?
said,
Who said
who
the
told you 50%? She goes,
We did? Oh, you did? Okay.
Well, why-
Because we didn't limit our building to 50% here, did we?
I don't know.
And plus, the building is in the city, and so, I mean, you would be compelled to city ordinances, not county.
So we were following, obviously, the state, the governor, and other entities. So when we did the 50% way back, we set that, probably, October, November, because to maintain the social distancing.
Right. No, I agree with the social distancing, Madam
Yeah.
Administrator.
But they
And
can
Jeff, I
do
could
that.
go May 1st. I could go May 1st.
Okay, so
But if
you
they
can
could
tell
start-
them May 1st.
And start educating people. They should start educating people
Yeah.
and that they're doing it. And
75% starting May 1st? Does that, Robert, you cool with that?
Mr. Chairman, if I
All
may.
right, here we go. Boom.
yeah, cool.
There you go.
Good. Where you go? I got you, Jeff.
Commissioner Burgash, if you actually wanted to separate that out as a separate thing from the financing thing, the reality is all of our airplanes, they're not even leaving the center lane empty, or center aisle seat. So
Definitely not the one in front of him
as
either.
far as I'm concerned, obviously, if you wanted to go ahead, if you feel like you could get 3 for 100%.
I don't got 3 for 100, but 75.
100% today is the right thing to do.
Of course.
So you've got 2. If there's a third one that would be willing to support that, we should not be constraining the venue. Jacksonville is doing it, and they're doing it just fine. And in all reality, whatever Alabama and Mississippi say they're doing, what they're actually doing is a whole lot different. Nobody's and you're not seeing that spike. I think people are well trained on how to behave, how to stay home, when appropriate, and so you certainly. I would be very supportive of lifting that limitation, and allowing this company to do the best they can.
And Jeff, I'll tell you, I'm going to stick with you.
75.
Yeah, on your 75 date. I'm going, when I leave here today, to another longtime employee, Marilyn Wesley, who died of COVID. It's insensitive in messaging as a county if we're not going to take protocols and take slow steps. When we've had people that work within our county for us that have died because of COVID, we should practice the protocols.
And Lumen, I'm with you. So 75. So
I'm good with that.
75% May 1st, and then what I would like to see is I'd like to get you to 100% in June. So let us know, communicate back, how are you going to do this safely? And, because again, you know, I tend to agree with Commissioner Underhill on this one, you know, 100%. If other people are doing it, again, I don't want to be third, right? Especially when we're hurting for money.
don't
But,
either, yes.
but
Jeff,
this-
one thing we don't want to do, we don't want the numbers of Bay County and Dade County and the number of positives that they've done.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
they eliminated a lot of protocols, and you look at the after effect of what's happening in Panama City and Miami-Dade, it's hurting their tourism. It's overwhelming their hospitals because they wanted to open up, and they have one of the highest levels of COVID positives in the country in Dade and Bay.
Well, we're not going to do that then. I mean, we'll do 75% and kind of look at the data, right? Look at the data.
Yeah, so my question was, you know, how many hockey games do we have left?
3 regular season and then at least 1 playoff game.
Okay, and then, how have we been at capacity for those? Are we, I mean, and I guess what other events do we have? You know, so, you know, my thing is, you know, going to 75 today would be great. I could be supportive of that, but if it's not necessary, you know, but.
So the events that we currently have contracted, they potentially might not be able to change the capacity levels in their sales. Some will be willing to do that. Some are concerned because I've opened up a sale at this, somebody's bought a ticket 10 rows back. Now I'm opening up rows in front of them. It's not
Sure.
really fair.
And Robert, that's why I'm supportive of
So,
the proposal for him,
but
because I
any
talked to
new
Cindy.
event-
To do
Yeah, because
75%
those are
today?
already sold, yeah.
Okay.
So any new events
Yeah, it's
that
just
are
a new-
coming, and we're seeing an uptick in, you know, 25 to 30%
But I mean, how many,
of new
how many
events
events do we
that
have we
are.
already sold, though? Other than the comedy? I mean, how many other tickets are on sale right now that this would impact?
None.
None, okay.
Well, hockey,
Right.
hockey.
So it's hockey.
Could, yes.
But, I mean, it's people that weren't going anyway, so. So I would be good with, all right, so I think you've got votes for, to go 75 today. And the only thing, hey, Jeff, the only thing it impacts right now.
We never voted on going to 50%.
Right.
Yeah, so we don't have to vote.
Y'all don't have to
Yeah,
vote
we
on
don't have to
that.
vote on it.
You don't have to vote on it. You just
Yeah.
have to let,
And you know what? They just
Yeah.
want a good partner, because if Cindy really wanted to, they could be at 100% right now. We've never really technically restricted anyone. But I think, you know, they want a corporate, a partner in what they're doing. So they have, yeah. So
But-
they want our recommendation.
I mean, for all honesty, though, I mean, you look at the NCAA and what they did with their basketball tournament. I mean, for us, as we were still having a peak in January, February, it was the prudent thing to do when we have Sunbelt coming. Now, of course, we would have loved to have allowed them to open the doors wide open and foot on the gas and throttle up. But again, we didn't want to be making national news about how we did a full venue for
Right.
Sunbelt, and it didn't work out so well.
didn't work.
So, I mean,
Well, you would say
that's.
Jacksonville did
Right.
theirs based on football. They
But-
never
but
filled the
not only this,
stadium
but
anyway.
The people
so,
that
I
are
mean,
coming have a reputation as well. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't behoove Sunbelt to open it all the way up and be part of that, because we've taken a risk. So,
Right. Well, even,
I think we're on a
we didn't even
75%.
we didn't sell Sunbelt. We didn't fill up the capacity at 50% with Sunbelt. So, I mean, us not opening up Sunbelt we still didn't meet those numbers.
So the big question here, Cindy, is if 75%, you got it. Are we going to get the act that we talked about? I'm not going to mention his name.
I'll make
Because
it.
I want to come to that concert,
I'm going to make
please.
that phone call today.
Man, you are big on that act, Commissioner.
I'm going.
Yeah. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board, I expect this next one to be a very quick conversation. But I'm sure you all have had discussions regarding this. This is something that we had an RFP go out for probably almost a year ago. I think, one, we've just kept this open. I think the improvements that were made, having experienced a couple of events there with the new scoreboard and everything, looks great. Thank you all for your support on that. So the question was, do we even want to have this discussion right now? Or not, I'm sorry, not right now, but schedule it for some months out, or do we want to? Well, like I said, we don't get to talk about it, so,
Yeah, let's discuss it.
you know, to have a discussion on tearing down this event venue, building a new one, somewhat in the middle of a pandemic, I didn't feel was necessarily the appropriate time. But wanted to have input from the board on if there was a time they would want to review the responses we received. I know I was asked to say, even if you don't want to proceed right now, can you at least pick the firm you would like to use? And so, again, I'm bringing this as to the board to ask for their direction, and I'll just start with Commissioner Berry and work the way.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And so mine, going to be very brief, and I'll wait to hear my colleagues' opinions about this, but when we talked about this last time, or one of the previous times, one of the things that was said was that new market tax credits that program wasn't being funded, or there wasn't any money left there. I saw something pretty recently where new market tax credits were awarded to a municipality, and it's been maybe a month. I'll have to go back and try to Google it and remember and try to figure out where it was. But it was, you know, in the teens, I don't know, 10, 12, 14 million in new market tax credits, which, if I recall, a lot of the financial equations and discussion that we had, you know, previously, you know, that was basically, you know, stricken from the discussion because we were told there weren't funding there. So maybe if somebody could, you know, take a little bit of, make a little bit of effort to see if new market, if there's been funding approved, maybe in one of the buckets of huge legislation last year, if they've refilled that bucket to some degree, and if that changes some of it, because I know we had at one point in time looked at a venue that would be still eligible for new market tax credits if they were if the program was funded. So
Thank you.
I'm interested to hear my colleagues think about it. And you can circle back. I'll go last.
Yes, sir, Commissioner May.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me just say, for me, I agree with Commissioner Bagash in that I'm not going to vote to tear the Bay Center down. I don't, because the bathroom gets outdated or the kitchen gets outdated, doesn't mean you tear the house down, you remodel it. I mean, I hate the ramps, I hate all the things that are there. I see a decrepit hotel there that, I mean, there can be some type of relationships. There's property to the south there. I mean, so I think that's a part of it. I would be supportive of a new sports arena that was brought forth that we talked about for many years. But I don't think that we should, you know, tote that load on our tourist development tax alone, although I think that, you know, there can be some help. I think, as my colleague to the right said, we're going to have new money market tax credits. We're going to have Triumph funds, and whoever can solidify those funds, and I would be supportive if they did that and brought it back. I could be supportive of the new sports arena, but I'm not going to make a commitment and with our neck on the line to fund it without some type of other funding and a funding plan that we would not have to supplement it into perpetuity. I mean, we can't continue to, although it will be a venue, it'll be a private venue. I'm not going to support any model that will leave those who sit in this seat after me an obligation to pay for capital or operations.
Sure. Commissioner Underhill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I have many times stated over the years, it is my opinion that the Bay Center is a monolithic icon to a bygone era, simply not the way that citizens recreate anymore. And it's because of its lack of flexibility. It is not the kind of facility that is the best way to serve a much more diverse entertainment environment that we live in. In my life in cyber, I spend a lot of time in these kind of facilities, a modern, flexible facility that can be a lot of different things. And we simply, we are not in the game as long as we do not have a facility that, that it really reflects the way that masses recreate today. It's just, you can't pick up a dog turd by the clean end. I mean, it's just, there's no way to make this work that will work financially or work to be the facility that the people of Escambia County need. Having said that, on the way in, I drove by 2 flashing yellow lights, and I took a little bit of a detour over to an area of my district that still floods, although, Gulf Beach Highway has been more or less solved. We have such vast priorities and pressures against our budget in Escambia County that I consider to be the absolute core business practices of the government. And we don't have enough money to pay for our core business practices. Now, the Roman Empire certainly decided at some point that theaters and stadiums was a part of core business practice, but that was in the decline of the Roman Empire, so I'd like to not draw that parallel. I do not believe this is a core business practice for the county. Now, if a municipal auditorium is something that's important to the municipality of Pensacola, then they probably ought to take the responsibility for that. Thank you.
Sure. And Jeff, I want to just say one thing to Doug's remarks, though, and that, Doug, I think you're right on that for a lot, but sometimes, and all too often, I see comments about it's not the purpose of the county, but the dollars that we do have exclude some of those things. So right now, we can't spend TDC on flooding, we can't spend it on public safety. We still have those dollars that we have to manage, so we can't stop everything else.
Yeah, Robert, I think that everybody's had this conversation enough to know, and certainly the five of us that have to make these decisions are very, very intimately aware of how those
Right.
pots work. And so that's not, I mean,
Right.
respectfully, I get exactly what you're saying, and I think that so does everybody else. Again, to have a constant draw off of taxpayer dollars, it's been very clearly shown that counties that do approach the state of Florida about modifying TDT so that it can be used for the infrastructure impacts that the tourism development or tourism industry has, I think that's fairly significant. We know what the cost is of a bridge being out.
Right.
We're about to have another bridge go out if we don't figure out a way to fix Bob Sykes.
And working on that.
Thank you.
And that's why I ended up using some DDT money to repair it so that we did get it for another 15 years. Yes, I think we all know that, but I've just seen some comments lately on why we aren't paying for public safety out of that, and that money that we're using for even this, we could be putting towards public safety, and the bottom line is you can't spend TDT money on public safety except in Okaloosa and Walton County.
Yep.
So it wasn't necessarily for you, but for people that I've seen.
No, very important value-added part of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Bergosh?
Yeah, Lumen, thanks for those comments, and I like I said, 3 times I brought it, and I think there's nothing wrong with the bones of that building. Again, I do agree that, you look at structures around the country, there are houses, structures, facilities, buildings, 100 years old, 150 years old. As long as they're structurally sound, you go in and you retrofit them, you renovate them, you modernize them. Unless you're the government, then you tear them down and build new ones. But the private market doesn't do that, by and large, unless they get a government tax credit to do so. So I would like to see something done. I brought it 3 times because I know, but the starting point of the conversation has to be this. What kind of a community do you want to live in? Do you want a community that has all kinds of great events? I do like, I'm not into bull riding, but there's a lot of people that are, and we have a facility that can accommodate that. I'm not into monster trucks, but hey, we have a facility that can bring the monster trucks. I'm not a fan of pro wrestling because it's fake, but there are people that like it. So we have a place that can, I might get assassinated for saying that, but in all seriousness, what kind of community do you want to live in? I like a community. I love this community. The very first concert I ever went to in my life was right after the Civic Center was opened, and I believe it was the first concert they ever had there. It was a band called Crocus. No one ever has heard of them. They were opening for a band called Kiss, which everyone has heard of. And since that time, Kiss has been here multiple times. In fact, the last time they were here, I went and saw them, and it was a great concert, and they mentioned that. They mentioned that for a show in Pensacola. So what kind of community do you want to live in? Do you want a community that says, we have no business doing this, and it costs us money, and then you never get a show? Then you're jumping in your car and driving 150 miles away to a venue a community that does have it. So I think the answer is we need the Civic Center or something like it. Does it have issues? Of course it does. The ice plant's got to be fixed. The chiller system, there's a lot of things, and Cindy and I have talked back and forth, and there's a spreadsheet out there that we've looked at, and I think we can get 20 or 25 years out of that facility if we're intelligent with the way we invest. And if we can do that and do those things, we've got the 5th set. That's the other thing that hasn't come up in this discussion. There are some of us up here that have worked very hard to get that enacted. We're still below most of the other counties in the area. There's a lot of pressure on us not to do it. We did it. We did the heavy lift. We've got the fifth cent, and there are portions of those cents that we can utilize to help do what we need to do in the Bay Center to get 20 or 25 years. I will say, Robert, for purposes of today's discussion, I do think this is not the time to talk about, these proposals that are out there that I do support. With the right, with the right amount of money coming in, tax credits, new market tax credits, Triumph money, if some of those things could be done, you would find my support. But I'm concerned, and I remain concerned about limiting the capacity and going from what we can do now, 12, 13,000, because we get a certain level of concerts, acts, they will not come to a 5,000-seat arena. They just won't do it. They will pass us right by. So, no matter how anyone tries to sell it, well, you don't really need 12,000. Yeah, I think we kind of do. I've been to graduations for Tate High School in that arena, and they fill it. So, with all that said, I agree with you. I don't think the time is right. I think that whole concept of the third-party proposals and all that needs to marinate until we are officially out of the COVID crisis. I think we're on the far side of the curve. I think we're going to beat it, but I do agree that right now it probably just needs to marinate in the background. But with that said, we do have to come up with a plan. If that's pie in the sky and it's not going to happen, we do have to come up with a plan to modernize the Bay Center and get another 20 years out of it. And then we can incorporate the skyboxes, and we can increase revenue, give them opportunities for revenue. Naming rights, we talked about that before. That kind of, died in the whole COVID pandemic. So the future's bright, but maybe for my vote, in my opinion, maybe right now not the time to have that conversation.
And I do agree that we need to figure out what the demands are. I would, and I'll give him a second, but I'm sure my colleagues that serve on the Florida West, PEDC, would love to find a way to tie it in with the tech park. And we talk about some of those cyber events that are being held, and probably the configuration of the current venue does not meet their needs. But if there was a way to tie those in, I think that would be great. I think for one, it's something that we do, right? The Cyber Coast, the UWF, IHMC, Corey, all of those, that it's a part of who we are. And so to have an event space or something for them to come do that, I'd say the other, of course, hurdle our community is having to overcome is the loss of the New World Landing. Think about how many events that we've attended there for whatever that will no longer be able to be held there. Just as we had, I think, a huge loss with the Bayfront Auditorium.
Yep.
And so I think our community is continuing to lose these spaces, and of course I've gone to a couple events at Brownsville Community Center now, because that's it's a little bit larger than some of the smaller events that we have, venues that we have, and that was a great event.
Oh, yeah.
And I think some people probably need to MapQuest or Google Maps to try to figure out how to get there.
Well, not many people come to the west side of Brownsville.
But now they know where it is. And,
Yeah, Commissioner Underhill and I, we know where that is.
And so there are some extra
Right,
demand.
and you're right,
I think
Robert.
to be able to have the different sized
But there's some
events.
value in downtown
Right.
that Brownsville just doesn't fit. There's not restaurants or not hotels. So I agree with
But
you,
for
Robert.
the events like we've gone to, it's fit. You're not looking to go to. It's not like a night out with a show that you're looking to go to have dinner somewhere first or have dinner
Right.
at the event.
Right.
So anyway, I know that.
And Robert, I'll follow your lead. Honestly, wherever I've worked with Ray Palmer in the PSA, and since I was on the PSA board looking for the sports arena. We know what they're doing over in Foley with the cheer competitions, and I know Cindy does a great job. I think there was a cheer competition somewhere around here this past weekend. This weekend, you saw the traffic downtown. You could see everything that happens when they bring in volleyball tournaments and basketball tournaments and cheerleading and gymnastics. So, I see it as, that sports arena, maybe, one thing, and then we have, the Bay Center, the conventions, you go to, well, we hadn't in years, but FAC, NACO, NOBCO, I mean, you look at all these conventions, I mean, even with Gulf Power Symposium, we have to go to Destin. I mean, it would be great to have a hotel and have those type of things here. So, I mean, I think that it's just, although, people will be looking for our lead, I agree with you, PEDC needs to be at the table. The city of Pensacola not only needs to be at the table, but they need to be at the table with some revenue, I mean, with the mayor, because it does help create a more vibrant downtown. And quite frankly, I mean, more than any other building, I mean, probably downtown, the greatest tourism economic impact is the Bay Center. I mean, when they have an event, there are a lot of people that come downtown.
My guess is the cheer competitions probably bring in more than a concert for the most part.
Man, it's expensive.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, when you get these teams of parents and everybody that
And
want to come
grandparents
and.
They all
and-
think their daughter's going to cheer
Oh,
for
yeah.
Florida one day. Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
so,
yeah.
I would,
Oh, it's huge
And
across the
I think
country.
from the hotelier's perspective is that they would say that, Dave Matthews a year and a half ago, whatever, what did that bring in terms of stay nights?
Right.
What was that impact? Was it maybe more local or people that came in and came down for the night and drove back home? Or,
Right.
I mean, do you want something that the minivans are going to be packed coming in and going to the restaurants and everything like that? So,
Well, I mean, we want people to come from New Orleans. I mean, because we have so much more to offer when they come to our events, have the beach, and we want those people from Mississippi and Alabama. So I said all that to say, Robert, I'm wide open. I mean, I'm like Commissioner Bergosh. I'm ready to do something. Exactly what that is, I don't know how it looks. I don't know how it's shaped, but you'd have my support in saying at some point, let's put it together. And it's not a one building. I mean, I don't see it as us just going in and demolishing or renovating the Bay Center. I see us, how do we become a part of the overall downtown redevelopment program? And so I think that all the moving parts need to be moved, and we've saturated this part, and we got to go to the east and to the west
Yep.
of downtown to do something.
Commissioner Berry, you mentioned you wanted to,
So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Just like to reiterate, I mean, as we go forward, I certainly agree with what my colleagues have said, and there is, I think everything we've done shows that there is a market. There is a market for especially some of the sports and youth-oriented activities. There's a market for that. So I'm very open-minded to it. I mean, that's some of the intent that, that's certainly some of the intent that I had when I supported, the 5th cent. Exactly what that would mean, I didn't know, but, for this endeavor, that was certainly probably the primary reason that I was supportive of that. But as we look at the financial model, I think that's going to be where the rubber hits the road for what I'm going to support. I mean, we've got to, as has been stated a couple of times, a lot of these things, there's a holistic community benefit to it that has a value. And to some degree, it's our job to determine what type of value, we place on that, meaning what type of value our community places on that holistic benefit of having those activities, having that arena for public use. But still, we've got to be able to make the value proposition work, even attributing that holistic public benefit to the facility. Is it able to be covered within the debt service of a fifth penny? Okay, those types of things make sense. It's, you hate to say never, and I think I've stated this before, I can't imagine any scenario being supportive of something that uses a funding model that either takes balances or cash flow from local option sales tax or general fund. We've got to make it work another way, and whatever that other way is, I'd love to, if it's something that we could make a decision on and maybe move forward with sometime this year, I think that'd be great. I mean, there is a market for this here because our people are leaving every weekend to go do these things other places. So I know there is a market. It's just a matter of making it work financially, at least where that gap or that subsidy is within the parameters that we consider that public benefit.
well, thank you for your comments, and I would say, before the 5th cent was implemented, we were still able to make $1.3 million debt service payment on the current facility each year. So that's still out there that we could use for whatever we decide. So I appreciate the discussion. Just to wrap up, I hear that we do not want to move forward with the RFP at this time. And we'll, I think it's really just no action. I'll just say right now, we don't know when we would take it up, but,
And talking to other funding sources, would it? I mean,
No.
some of those who want to present, they could go talk to funding sources, and I think we've all stated if you brought the funding, you'd probably find it would land on favorable ears.
If all we ended up being was the sponsor to make the Triumph grant eligible,
right.
Yeah.
there you go. I
Exactly.
mean, if
That's
you
all.
bring that to us, I mean, you talk about a no-brainer. I mean, then you've made everything work short of that, which would require us to be part of it. Okay, well, we're gonna help partner with you with an agency that certainly has the funds, so.
But on the other hand, I can bond. I don't need you to finance it for me, is my take.
Right.
That's not part of what I was talking about.
I understand that's not what
That's,
you're, yeah.
that's what I'm not, no,
Right.
I'm not talking about funding. I'm talking about you're going to
That's
try.
what I'm saying.
the
I
money.
mean, that's what one of the proposals had,
mean,
was that we pay them to finance it.
I'm not going to further in debt for further generations or those who will sit in this seat.
Sure.
But as you said, we got the 1.3 and the 5th cent. I mean, what is,
We got the 1.3 plus the 5th cent.
right, I mean, and so, but I mean, there's no other conversation beyond that for me.
Commissioner Underhill?
Robert, thank you very much. I mean, one of the things, I think that we should always, no, go ahead, Madam Administrator.
So we're still in blackout, so, no, we're not. I mean, we are still in blackout in terms of the three proposers should not be talking to you about financing the programs that have been provided to procurement, because we've not released them. So we're in like,
I'm talking about the original one that was not.
Well, one, you can vote to waive it. Number one, you can vote to waive it. Number two, I mean, we just not accept any more proposals. I mean, go.
we have three. We have three in-house that came in last July that we have not had provided to you all because you sit as the selection committee. So that's what the question is do you want us to contact them and have them make a presentation to you all with what they provided last July? I do not know that they are all still interested because of the pandemic. So the purpose of this conversation is to find out if you want us to take that step, to go back to them, to see if they're all interested.
I say you close it down, and I mean, we've given clear direction that if they don't have Triumph funding and other funding, that it's probably going to be a non-starter. So as far as I'm concerned, you know, it's null and void.
I might be willing to look at what they have to say, but not right now. We're in the middle of this, I mean, we're on the right side of it, but there's still a lot of unknowns.
Yep, that was my, Commissioner Underhill?
Mr. Chairman, we have a process, and regardless of COVID or whatnot else, we should go ahead and follow that process. And those companies have worked hard to make those proposals and in accordance with the process that we laid out. I think it's pretty clear. I mean, everybody's made very clear what their thoughts are, and there's certainly nothing new said here today that hasn't already been said from this dais many times. But what we need to do is follow that process out to closure. They've been in the blackout period for going on 9 months now. Those who are interested in giving that presentation should give that presentation, and then we should give an up or down, yes or no statement, and then close out that procurement cycle, that process. That then would open up basically open the floor back up, or the discussion back up to for an unsolicited proposal. But I think that one of the things to keep in mind is the rules of engagement here are the unsolicited proposal rules of engagement. We are not, as a board, putting out an RFP to say, you know, that this is, we want, you know, purple this and 6 of those and that kind of business. They have done the work. We initiated the process by accepting them. We need to go ahead and finish that and close that loop so that everybody understands where we're at. And I believe, Madam Administrator, would you acknowledge that that is the smart way for everybody to understand where everybody else is standing? So, okay.
If I may, I would say that it is our process, and closing it is something we've done before without seeing it all the way through. I don't think that we expected to come into a time like we've had in the last year when that went out. And to be fair for all of them, I think I'm getting a lot of north-south and head nods that we probably just going to close out that process.
And if it's the will of the board to simply close out the process and say we're no longer seeking we're not interested in moving forward with any of the proposals, that's a very smart move as well.
Okay, thank you. All right.